the body keeps the score. Buddhist secrets to heal repressed stress anxiety. Act I, the gateway of Shinshin Ichinyo body-mind unity. Welcome, traveler of the inner landscape, to this deliberate sanctuary of stillness and presence. As you position your physical form in this moment, whether reclined upon a bed preparing to cross the threshold into deep somnolence, or seated upright to carve out a rare pocket of absolute tranquility within the relentless momentum of your day, allow the weight of your existence to settle. There is absolutely no requirement for movement now. There is no destination to reach, no objective to fulfill, and no expectation to satisfy. You have arrived precisely at the intersection of time and space where your presence is required. Consider this environment a fortified container, a safe, non-judgmental territory engineered specifically for deep restoration, somatic reclamation, and profound cognitive rest. Over the course of this extended journey, we will methodically parse the quiet, structural wisdom native to Zen Buddhist philosophies. Our primary objective is to evaluate the complex language of your physical sensations, viewing them not as mechanical malfunctions, but as eloquent, sophisticated communication. These ancestral perspectives have served as a stabilizing anchor for countless individuals across millennia, offering a framework that refuses to bifurcate human experience. In this methodology, your physical vulnerabilities and your psychological evolution are not distinct. Competing pathways, rather. They form an undivided, singular tapestry unfolding in systemic harmony. As these concepts articulate themselves, your sole responsibility is to maintain a natural, unforced respiratory rhythm, permitting these structural ideas to wash over your consciousness like a continuous, steady rain upon parched earth. In the profound silence that characterizes the prelude to rest, as the ambient noise of the external world gradually attenuates, a unique diagnostic window opens. This is your opportunity to practice deep, radical listening. The majority of us carry some form of physical sediment, perhaps a localized chronic ache within the lumbar region, a rigid constriction across the trapezoids, or an ambiguous, migratory discomfort that evades simple diagnostic categorization. It is essential to state clearly that modern clinical medicine offers highly sophisticated, indispensable interventions for these manifestations. The insights explored here are designed to operate as a profound, complementary dimension of self-understanding, never as a replacement for necessary clinical care. We are investigating an analytical framework that identifies the human body not merely as an anatomical apparatus of bone and tissue, but as an advanced repository of organic intelligence. If you suspend habitual analytical skepticism for a moment, you can begin to conceptualize your physical form as an entity engaged in continuous, real-time communication with your conscious mind. It does not employ syntax or vocabulary. Instead, it communicates through the nuanced shifts of raw sensation. Every localized throb, every structural knot, every transient flutter of visceral unease represents a deliberate transmission encoded in the direct language of somatic feeling. What if the persistent cephalalgia, or the undocumented physiological anomalies that conventional diagnostics struggle to isolate, are not random, chaotic background noise? What if they represent the body's highly organized attempt to signal a disruption in your deeper emotional or psychological equilibrium? For thousands of years, contemplative traditions across diverse cultural landscapes have mapped this unbreakable loop connecting physical architecture to internal processing. The Zen tradition encapsulates this systemic integration within the foundational phrase Shinshin Ichinyo, the absolute non-duality of mind and body. This concept asserts that the psychological architecture and the biological framework are not two independent systems tethered together by a neurological interface. They are a singular, unified reality observed from two different perspectives. When we actively internalize this principle of unity, we transition away from the aggressive suppression of isolated symptoms and begin to address the systemic origins of our discomfort. Exhale completely now. Direct your attention to the mechanical rhythm of your respiratory cycle as it expands and contracts the thoracic cavity. With every inhalation, imagine a clean, restorative current of oxygenated energy penetrating the deepest cellular matrices of your form. With every exhalation, consciously permit structural tension to liquefy and drain away. This fundamental optimization of breath awareness is the baseline architecture of Zen practice, a reliable, biological bridge connecting the analytical cortical networks with the vast autonomous spaces of your subconscious mind. As your respiration settles into its natural, unforced rhythm, we will systematically navigate the various topographical zones of your body to decrypt the specific messages they may be generating. This anatomical exploration is conducted with absolute respect for the absolute uniqueness of your personal history. Within this space, there is no room for self-condemnation, clinical frustration, or judgment. We replace these reactions with disciplined curiosity and radical self-compassion. These alternative socio-spiritual frameworks do not supplant orthodox medical diagnostic tracks, rather, they expand them, honoring your entire biological and psychological ecosystem as an interconnected whole. Act the somatic topography, mapping the biological vessels, the cranial domain, and the illusions of intellect. We initiate our systematic focus at the apex of your physical structure, the cranial domain, the crown of your biological architecture. If your daily life is characterized by frequent tension headaches, a band of pressure across the frontal lobe, or an unyielding tightness behind the ocular orbits, Zen wisdom invites you to evaluate a fundamental question. Are you currently over-allocating your vital energy to the abstract realms of conceptual thought? Is your analytical engine running at a dangerous surplus, attempting to solve every existential problem, relational nuance, and systemic challenge through the exclusive mechanism of hyper-rational optimization? The classical Zen methodology emphasizes the state of mushin, frequently translated as no mind or mind without conceptual fixation. Mushin does not imply a state of cognitive vacancy or intellectual deficiency. Rather, it represents a highly advanced operational state, where the continuous, looping patterns of analytical thought are permitted to drop away, allowing a direct, unmediated engagement with the present reality to emerge. Your cranial tension may be interpreted as a physical emergency brake, a clear signal from your physiology, indicating an urgent need to re-establish equilibrium between thinking and being, between relentless logical decomposition and spacious intuitive awareness. Historical Zen texts frequently describe the cranial region as the primary interface for expansive non-conceptual clarity. When this localized zone feels physically constricted, locked in pressure, or burdened by pain, it frequently mirrors an intellectualized alienation from your deep somatic intelligence. Your body is effectively issuing a non-negotiable invitation to place your trust in a form of knowing that exists far beyond the boundaries of semantic reasoning, a quiet, grounded comprehension that resides exclusively in silence, in unyielding presence, and in the pristine spaces between your rapid-fire thoughts. With every breath you execute now, visualize a cooling, spacious energy diffusing throughout the entire cranial vault. There is absolutely no need to forcefully alter your current sensations or demand an immediate cessation of discomfort. Simply allow a soft, non-judgmental awareness to saturate this region. Frequently, the precise moment we cease our aggressive mental resistance to pain and replace it with clean, compassionate attention, we alter our neurochemical response, creating the exact spaciousness required for your body's intrinsic regulatory systems to begin their restorative work. The cervical bridge and mental agility. We descend our focus to the cervical spiny, critical structural bridge, connecting the conceptual processing of the head with the visceral, emotional processing of the heart and torso. The neck is an extraordinarily sophisticated biomechanical apparatus designed to maximize your field of vision, allowing the head to rotate smoothly to evaluate diverse perspectives and scan the wider horizon. When you experience persistent stiffness, a painful reduction in your range of cervical motion, or a chronic knotting of the levator scapulae, it's worth examining whether this physical rigidity correlates with a psychological inflexibility within your current life landscape. Is there a specific situation, relationship, or professional challenge where you are demonstrating a stubborn reluctance to pivot your view, to validate alternative angles, or to abandon a highly habitual, defensive perspective? In the discipline of Zen, flexibility of mind is positioned as a primary virtue, with fluid capacity to adapt seamlessly to shifting conditions, to perceive reality beyond the distorted filters of our personal biases. and to remain unattached to rigid ideological positions. Furthermore, the cervical region represents the physical site of integration between intellect and raw emotion, between what you conceptually understand to be true and what you viscerally feel to be true. Discomfort in this critical junction often asks, is there a structural harmony between your cognitive strategies and your emotional reality? Are your external actions, your daily speech, and your professional outputs truly aligned with your deepest, non-negotiable values? The historical Buddha emphasized the cultivation of samadhi, or right view, the disciplined practice of perceiving phenomena precisely as they are, stripped of the distortions of fear, projection, and defensive delusion. Your cervical tension may be an elegant somatic warning system, inviting you to realign your analytical perceptions with the authentic wisdom of your heart center. As you breathe, allow your field of awareness to completely envelop the neck. Observe the precise texture of the stiffness without attempting to force an artificial stretch or demand immediate relaxation. In this act of pure, non-reactive noticing, you dismantle the psychological resistance to the discomfort, thereby initiating a cooperative dialogue with your body's innate intelligence. The throat portal and authentic articulation. We move our attention forward to the throat portal, the primary center of vocalization, creative externalization, and personal truth in numerous somatic and psychological traditions. This anatomical region governs the precise efficiency with which we communicate our internal reality to the external world. If you are navigating an unexplainable susceptibility to localized tightness, vocal fatigue, a persistent globus sensation, or recurrent throat discomfort, your physiology may be posing a set of structural questions. Are you actively speaking your authentic truth? Are there critical boundaries that need to be verbally articulated? Or conversely, are there reactive, harmful words that would be far better left unsaid? Zen Buddhism places an extraordinary premium on the parameter of samaveka, or right speech. This ethical framework dictates that communication must satisfy specific structural criteria. It must be consistently truthful, intentionally helpful, spoken with a mind of loving kindness, and executed at the optimal, mindful moment. Your throat discomfort may be inviting you to execute a comprehensive audit of how you utilize the profound power of language. Are you expressing your core identity with uncompromised authenticity? Or are you swallowing your boundaries to maintain a fragile, superficial external peace? Are you practicing deep, receptive listening when others speak? Or is your internal mind merely calculating its next counter-argument? Furthermore, are you allocating sufficient space for absolute silence within your daily communication matrix? The historical Buddha famously noted that words possess the dual capacity to both destroy and heal. When words are simultaneously accurate and kind, they possess the structural power to fundamentally alter our reality. Your throat center may be requesting that you inject a far higher degree of mindfulness into how you project your voice into the world and how you receive the vocal outputs of those around you. As you continue your steady, deep respiration, allow your analytical focus to rest directly within the throat, without entering a loop of judgment or self-critical analysis. Simply catalog the physical sensations present. Your biological organism possesses an inherent trajectory toward systemic equilibrium. It requires only the catalyst of your unfragmented, patient attention to begin realigning its vocal mechanics. The cardiac core and emotional architecture. We shift our focus downward into the thoracic cavity, anchoring our awareness within the cardiac correth, central engine of your circulatory system and the primary seat of your emotional architecture. In the Zen lexicon, the concept of kokoro represents an undivided fusion of heart and mind, asserting that our truest intellect does not reside exclusively within the cerebral cortex, but is anchored deeply within this central emotional core. While localized chest pain, acute palpitations, or respiratory constriction are serious biological signals that absolutely require immediate clinical investigation, these physical manifestations can also simultaneously function as complex mirrors of deep emotional patterns, seeking conscious processing. Is your cardiac core currently carrying an unacknowledged burden of unprocessed grief? Have the historical wounds of relational rejection or profound loss caused you to unconsciously build an armor of muscular constriction around your capacity to feel deeply? The foundational Buddhist practice of metta, or loving-kindness, operates on a strict structural rule. It must begin with the radical extension of compassion toward oneself, specifically targeting the highly vulnerable, wounded aspects of our own current experience. An iconic Zen narrative details a student querying a master. What is the singular most critical attainment on this path, to which the master unhesitatingly replied? An uncompromised open heart. Regardless of the specific emotional lacerations your cardiac center has sustained across your history, whether intense sorrow, structural betrayal, or profound loss, this remarkable organ continues to contract, beat, and sustain your biological life moment by moment with absolute fidelity. It functions as an unyielding servant to your existence, operating continuously without requiring your conscious permission or intellectual supervision. Direct your breath intentionally into the center of your chest now. Visualize your respiration as a soft, radiant warmth, illuminating the entire thoracic cavity with unconditional acceptance. Offer a silent, profound gesture of gratitude to this vital engine for its unceasing service, validating its constant rhythm. By extending friendship to your heart, you alter your autonomic nervous system profile, signaling to your brain that the immediate threat has passed, allowing the protective muscular bracing around your rib cage to finally dissolve. The pulmonary lungs and the cycles of exchange. Enveloping the cardiac core are the pulmonary lungs, the primary physiological instruments that connect your internal chemistry directly to the wider global ecosystem through the continuous act of respiration. Every single inhalation draws the chemistry of the external world across your cellular thresholds. Every single exhalation relinquishes a piece of your internal chemistry back to the collective environment. When you encounter chronic shallow breathing, hyperventilation patterns, or a feeling of suffocating tightness within the lung fields, your physiology may be mirroring an imbalance in your fundamental relationship with receiving and releasing, with allowing the natural current of life to cycle through you without frantic intervention or rigid control. Zen meditation, at its operational baseline, begins and ends with the absolute observation of the respiratory cycle. The practitioner does not attempt to artificially manipulate the breath, nor do they force a dogmatic pranayama structure instead. They cultivate the role of the dispassionate witness, observing the natural, unforced mechanics of inhalation and exhalation. This act of pure witnessing sends an immediate, powerful signal down the vagus nerve, prompting the parasympathetic nervous system to downregulate the survival networks of the brain. Take a series of deep, structurally expansive breaths now. Viscerally feel how your entire torso, front, sides, and back widens to accommodate the incoming volume of air, and note how it naturally, effortlessly collapses to release it. This exact respiratory loop has been your constant companion since the precise second of your biological birth, and it will remain your unyielding baseline until your final exhalation. It is the most fundamental, elegant meditation available to consciousness. The simple, profound realization of the miracle of breathing, the gastrointestinal matrix, and the processing of reality. We lower our focus beneath the diaphragm, entering the complex architecture of the gastrointestinal matrix, the extensive digestive system responsible for dismantling, sorting, and absorbing the physical fuel we extract from the external world. In our contemporary lifestyle, characterized by hyperstimulation and chronic urgency, gastrointestinal distress, irritable bowel patterns, and constant abdominal discomfort represent an epidemic of somatic dysregulation. Beyond the obvious biochemical vectors of nutritional intake, microbiome health, and inflammatory markers, this complex enteric nervous system, often termed the second brain, functions as a direct mirror of how you process reality itself. The Zen paradigm incorporates the structural practice of mindful consumption, prioritizing absolute sensory presence during the act of eating. This methodology naturally scales outward to dictate how we digest all incoming experiential data. Digital information, relational dynamics, professional stress, and material environments. Your digestive distress may be posing a direct structural inquiry. What specific life event, professional transformation, or unexpressed conflict are you currently struggling to psychologically digest or accept? Are you currently oversaturating your cognitive capacity, taking in far more emotional and informational stimulation than your system can healthily process, filter, and eliminate? The Buddha consistently articulated the doctrine of the middle via structured path of deliberate moderation, positioned precisely between the destructive extremes of sensory indulgence and harsh deprivation. This elegant framework applies directly to your relationship with consumption of every conceivable variety. Your gastrointestinal matrix may be issuing a non-negotiable demand to return to systemic balance, consuming exclusively what serves your highest operational alignment. As you breathe, let your field of awareness expand to completely cushion your stomach, liver, and intestines. These organs labor continuously to sustain your vitality, extracting nourishment while systematically isolating and expelling what does not serve you. In their quiet biological intelligence lies an explicit blueprint for optimal psychological living. Receive what is genuinely nourishing and fearlessly relinquish what is superfluous or toxic, maintaining absolute equanimity throughout the entire cycle. The hepatic vessel and the processing of hostility. Positioned within the right upper quadrant of your abdomen is the hepatic vessel, the liver, an extraordinary physiological laboratory responsible for over 500 distinct metabolic functions, including systemic detoxification, protein synthesis, and biochemical filtration. In both classical Eastern medical philosophies and specific Western psychosomatic frameworks, the liver is consistently linked to the systemic processing of intense, high-arousal emotional dynamics, specifically chronic anger, unexpressed frustration, buried resentment, and existential bitterness. When these high-velocity emotional currents are chronically generated but denied healthy, conscious articulation, they do not simply evaporate. Instead, they are driven down into the cellular architecture, frequently manifesting as localized stagnation, chemical inflammation, and functional dysregulation within this vital organ. Your hepatic discomfort may be inviting you to execute a forensic examination of your emotional landscape. Where are you currently hoarding unvoiced anger? What historical resentments or systemic betrayals are you continuing to carry that are entirely ready to be systematically dismantled and released? The Buddhist architecture of forgiveness is completely misunderstood if it is conceptualized as the passive condoning of harmful or unethical actions. Rather, it is defined as a calculated, self-protective strategy designed to liberate your own biological system from the toxic, corrosive burden of carrying historical hostility. It does not demand that you suppress legitimate anger or fabricate a superficial state of harmony. It requires that you acknowledge the absolute, unvarnished truth of your historical wounding, while consciously refusing to allow that historical data to permanently dictate or degrade your present biological vitality. The globally revered Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh famously observed that maintaining active anger is functionally equivalent to grasping a red-hot coal with the intense intent of hurling it at an adversary. You are indisputably the individual who sustains the primary, devastating thermal injury. Your liver may be issuing an urgent somatic invitation to audit your emotional storehouses, identifying and relinquishing the psychological weights that are no longer actively serving your evolution. Breathe with absolute gentleness now, allowing your warm, compassionate focus to saturate the right upper quadrant of your torso. This complex, unyielding organ requires your deliberate friendship, your psychological understanding, and the invaluable gift of emotional equilibrium that can only occur when feelings are mindfully processed in real time, rather than chronically stored in the biological cellar. The renal foundations and the architecture of fear. We shift our awareness toward the posterior wall of the abdominal cavity, locating the renal foundation's kidneys, a pair of highly sophisticated filtration units responsible for maintaining the hyperdelicate balance of systemic fluids, electrolyte concentrations, and arterial blood pressure. Across ancient healing paradigms, the renal zone is identified as the foundational repository of our most primal survival instinct, specifically our relationship with chronic fear, existential anxiety, and systemic insecurity regarding our foundational safety in the world. When your renal foundations are structurally or energetically compromised, it frequently mirrors a deep, ongoing pattern of survival anxiety that has transitioned from an acute temporary response into a fixed, chronic state of systemic neuroendocrine activation. Zen Buddhism addresses this universal challenge through the concept of non-fear. This state is not defined as the absolute robotic absence of fear sensations, rather. It represents a highly advanced psychological capacity to completely coexist with fear sensations without permitting them to dictate your structural choices or hijack your identity. Fear is a completely natural, evolutionarily optimized biological response designed to maximize survival probability during moments of genuine existential threat. The profound psychological suffering associated with anxiety does not stem from the primary sensation of fear itself. It originates entirely from our secondary cognitive resistance to it, our desperate attempts to run from it, and our unexamined belief that we are the fear we are experiencing. As the historical Buddha articulated, fear is an expected, predictable reaction when an individual begins to peel back the comfortable illusions of permanence and control and moves closer to absolute existential truth. Your renal foundations may be requesting that you systematically evaluate your operational relationship with fear itself. Are you permitting a protective instinct to mutate into a limiting matrix of chronic avoidance? As you maintain your steady, unforced respiratory cycle, let your awareness gently wrap around the lumbar region where your kidneys reside. These quiet, unceasing filters work around the clock to maintain your internal homeostasis. They deserve your deep appreciation, your compassionate understanding, and the profound sense of foundational safety that can only manifest when you consciously recognize your intrinsic, unassailable belonging within the vast, interconnected web of life. The Hara center and the ground of vitality. We move our focal point forward and slightly downward, anchoring our awareness within the lower abdomen, approximately 2 inches below the umbilicus. In the Japanese Zen lineage, this precise anatomical and energetic center of gravity is explicitly designated as the Harathi definitive physical, energetic, and spiritual anchor of the entire human being. The systematic cultivation of Hara awareness is an absolute baseline requirement across all classical meditation traditions, because it provides a heavy, unshakable ballast pulling the fragmented, hyperreactive energy of the mind down out of the abstract loops of cranial thought and grounding it securely within the physical reality of the lower torso. When you experience chronic discomfort, deep structural bracing, or a sensation of hollow weakness within this lower abdominal basin, it often reflects a structural blockage within your creative expression, an unhealed emotional pattern regarding personal autonomy, or a profound alienation from your foundational life force. This vital territory may be posing a series of essential inquiries. Have you been actively suppressing your creative, instinctual impulses to conform to external expectations? Have you permitted historical violations of your boundaries or unexamined relationship dynamics to remain unacknowledged within this intimate space? Are you operating your life from your absolute, authentic center, or are you perpetually off balance, chasing the volatile currents of external validation and societal approval? Zen practice consistently demonstrates that when an individual learns to consciously operate directly from the Hara, their external actions assume an entirely different structural quality. They become remarkably direct, unswervingly honest, completely grounded, and executed in effortless harmony with the present reality. As you breathe now, allow the absolute center of your attention to drop completely into the lower abdominal basin. Viscerally feel the rise and fall of the abdominal wall against your clothing. This region contains your physical center of gravity, establishing a conscious connection with it. Provides an immediate, natural sense of structural stability and psychological presence, rendering you unshakable, like an ancient tree whose root architecture is driven deep into the bedrock of the earth. The spinal columns and the architecture of integrity. We shift our diagnostic awareness to the posterior axis of your form. The spinal column, the structural backbone of your physical existence. Lower, middle, and upper back pain represent some of the most ubiquitous physical challenges in modern society, while ergonomic deficiencies, structural degeneration, and poor kinetic habits are clear mechanical vectors that require rigorous attention. There is simultaneously a profound psychological and energetic architecture to this structural pillar. The spine represents the literal and metaphorical axis of personal integrity, systemic support, and the absolute courage to stand uncompromised in your authentic truth. When you analyze localized back discomfort through a psychosomatic lens, the specific zones often yield targeted insights. Pain in the lumbar spine frequently correlates with deep anxieties regarding financial stability, core survival, or a perceived lack of foundational support in your primary life structures. Discomfort in the thoracic, mid-back region often mirrors the sensation of being caught in the middle of unsustainable conflicting demands, or carrying a crushing load of emotional obligations for others, while completely neglecting your own fundamental needs for self-care and boundary enforcement. The cervical and upper thoracic region, specifically between the scapulae, frequently functions as an unconscious defensive armor, bracing against emotional vulnerability, archiving hidden grief, or carrying the metaphorical weight of the world on your shoulders. The baseline of Zen meditation requires the cultivation of a specific physical posture sitting like an unmoving mountain, with an axial alignment that is structurally straight but completely devoid of rigid, hypervigilant tension. This precise physical posture is designed to actively mirror and generate a corresponding psychological state, a state of uncompromised alignment with your deepest values, supported by ironclad boundaries and radical self-care. Maintaining a high degree of fluid flexibility while absolutely refusing to collapse under external pressure. As you breathe, run your awareness slowly up the length of your spine, from the sacrum, through the lumbar curves, passing between the scapulae, all the way to the occipital junction at the base of the skull. This extraordinary architectural marvel supports your entire sensory apparatus throughout your life, enabling both rigid stability and fluid, multidirectional movement. It deserves your profound respect, your meticulous care, and the deep alignment that manifests when your external life choices are synchronized with your authentic nature. The lower extremities in the trajectory of your path. We direct our awareness downward into the lower extremities, hips, thighs, knees, ankles, and feet that collectively form your primary interface with the physical earth. These sophisticated kinetic chains are engineered to support your entire weight, absorb high-velocity impacts, maintain dynamic equilibrium, and facilitate your physical movement, exploration, and trajectory through space. When you navigate chronic discomfort, joint stiffness, or structural vulnerability within these regions, Zen wisdom invites you to evaluate your psychological relationship with your current life path. Do you feel fundamentally grounded, stable, and secure in the professional and personal direction you are traveling? Are you moving forward into your future with clarity and alignment? Or are you experiencing deep, unacknowledged hesitation, resistance, or fear regarding your next major transition? The Zen tradition prioritizes the practice of kinhin, or walking meditation, demonstrating that mindfulness is absolutely not a state confined exclusively to static, seated isolation. It must be seamlessly extended into active movement. During kinhin, every single phase of a step, the lifting of the heel, the swing of the leg, the precise articulation of the foot, meeting the earth is observed with absolute crystalline presence. Each step transitions into a radical opportunity to experience your direct connection to the planet, which supports your physical form unconditionally. Localized joint pain or structural instability within the lower extremities may be asking, are you maintaining an optimal equilibrium between doing and being, between aggressive forward momentum and necessary, restorative rest? As you breathe, let your field of awareness cascade down through the hip joints, running along the major muscle groups of the legs, pooling within the knees and ankles, and expanding into the soles of your feet. These incredible structures have carried your history across countless miles of diverse terrain. They deserve your immense gratitude, your focused care, and the steady, unhurried progress that manifests when you commit to taking exactly one mindful step at a time. The cutaneous boundary and the shield of presence. We expand our focus outward to envelop the entirety of your form, anchoring our awareness within the cutaneous boundary, the skin, your largest organ and your primary structural interface with the external universe. The skin is an extraordinarily sophisticated biological shield. It continuously mediates between your internal chemistry and the outer environment, protecting your internal systems from pathogens and trauma, while simultaneously maintaining a hypersensitive network of sensory receptors to read the world. When you encounter persistent dermatological challenge, eczema flares, chronic psoriasis, unexplainable rashes, or localized hypersensitivity, your physiology may be communicating in a unique outward dialect. These cutaneous manifestations frequently ask a set of foundational questions. Where are you currently failing to enforce healthy, uncompromised psychological boundaries? What toxic elements, emotional intensities, or chaotic environments are you actively absorbing from your surroundings that are fundamentally violating your internal integrity? Conversely, what intense, internal emotional currents such as buried rage or unexpressed grief are currently seeking a direct pathway of externalization because they have been denied vocal or emotional articulation in the Buddhist lexicon? An optimal boundary is conceptualized neither as a rigid, impenetrable fortress wall that isolates us from connection, nor as a complete absence of defense that leaves us vulnerable to systemic saturation. Rather, it is viewed as a highly mindful, semi-permeable membrane that permits authentic connection while absolutely preserving internal systemic integrity. The Zen framework emphasizes the standard of just this, the radical practice of being unreservedly present with the immediate phenomenon, precisely as it manifests, completely stripped of emotional rejection or aesthetic judgment. Instead of entering an aggressive psychological war against a dermatological flare, Zen wisdom invites you to bring a soft, non-judgmental curiosity to what your skin is attempting to externalize. This shift away from frantic resistance immediately alters your neuroimmunological profile, de-escalating the systemic stress responses that frequently fuel inflammatory skin conditions. As you breathe now, imagine your respiration diffusing outward from your core, gently touching your cutaneous boundary from the inside out, delivering clean, soothing energy to every cellular layer. Your skin has protected you since before the moment of your birth. It deserves your deep appreciation, your compassionate understanding, and the clear, structural boundaries that permit you to engage with the external world on your own precise terms. Act I. Deconstructing suffering, the mechanics of resistance. To ensure this anatomical and psychological audit achieves its maximum therapeutic value, we must establish a critical, non-negotiable understanding. Absolutely none of this analytical framework is about blame, self-flagellation, or moral judgment. Your physical symptoms, localized aches, and chronic conditions are absolutely not punishments generated by an angry universe, nor are they indications of spiritual failure or psychological inadequacy. They are, in their purest form, neutral invitations to expanded awareness. They are highly organized systemic communications designed to demonstrate precisely where your current life choices, emotional habits, or cognitive strategies may be out of alignment with your deepest biological and psychological health. This framework aligns directly with the authentic Buddhist understanding of karma. In popular culture, karma is routinely distorted into a simplistic, punitive system of cosmic retribution, a moralistic judge punishing misdeeds. In the actual analytical architecture of Zen, karma is understood simply as the clean, non-judgmental law of cause and effect, the natural unfolding of specific outcomes based on matching prior conditions. Your current physical patterns are not condemning you. They are merely illuminating the reality of your current internal conditions. They are pointing out precisely where your vital energy has become structurally congested, where emotional processing has been artificially arrested, and where focused, compassionate attention is required to re-establish homeostatic flow. This communication is generated not from a place of malice or critique, but from the baseline evolutionary intelligence that animates every single cell of your biological structure. The historical Buddha advanced a revolutionary psychological insight when he asserted that human suffering, dukkha, does not originate from the primary experience of physical pain itself. Rather, it is generated almost entirely by our secondary resistance to that pain, our frantic judgments about it, and the complex, terrifying narratives we construct around it. When we encounter physical discomfort, our habitual default setting is to enter an immediate state of psychological warfare against the sensation. We tense the surrounding muscle tissue, activate the sympathetic survival networks, and flood our consciousness with catastrophic projections regarding the future implications of the pain. This reaction shoots a second arrow into our own system. We take a primary, unavoidable physical discomfort and compound it exponentially with a secondary layer of mental and emotional agony. Zen practice offers a radical, highly effective alternative: the disciplined cultivation of raw presence with the physical sensation, precisely as it exists in the immediate moment, entirely stripped of secondary commentary. In this spacious, non-reactive field of awareness, we make a profound diagnostic discovery. We realize that even the most intense physical sensations are not solid, unchanging blocks of suffering. When evaluated under the microscope of focused attention, they reveal themselves to be highly fluid, constantly fluctuating patterns of energy. They arise, they shift in intensity, they alter their precise location, and they eventually pass away. Absolutely nothing in the phenomenal world is permanent. Everything is locked in a state of continuous dynamic flux. As you continue your steady, unhurried respiration, notice if there is a specific zone of your body currently broadcasting its presence through discomfort. Without attempting to artificially alter the sensation or execute a frantic cure, can you simply permit your awareness to sit beside it with radical kindness? Can you listen to its structural signature without immediately deploying an analytical narrative, a judgment, or a fix? This simple, unfragmented presence is the exact catalyst required to transform your relationship with your physiology. Act IV. Clinical protocols of the monastic mindset. To ground these philosophical principles into actionable, day-to-day reality, we will now map out 6 specific, practical methodologies derived from the intersection of Zen Buddhist tradition and contemporary somatic psychology. These protocols are designed to complement, expand, and optimize your overall well-being. Protocol 1. Somatic auditing and deep interception. The primary intervention requires a transition away from symptom suppression toward deliberate, structured somatic auditing. Before you execute a habitual strategy to instantly silence or medicate an emerging physical symptom, you are invited to pause and intentionally construct a clinical space of inner awareness to receive the transmission. This protocol is executed through the disciplined application of the body scan. You direct the laser of your unfragmented attention slowly and methodically through the entire landscape of your physical form, starting at the vertex of the cranium and descending through the facial muscles, the jaw, the cervical spine, the shoulders, the thoracic cavity, the abdominal basin, the pelvic floor, and down through the lower extremities to the tips of the toes. At each station along this anatomical journey, your sole objective is to log the precise sensory data, present vibration, temperature, pressure, constriction, or neutrality without applying an aesthetic grade of good or bad. This disciplined practice shifts your neurological orientation out of conceptual anxiety into direct interoceptive contact with your present reality. From this direct contact, clear intuitive insights regarding the life adjustments your body requires can naturally surface. Protocol 2. Emotional metabolism and the breath anchor. The secondary protocol requires the conscious recognition and metabolism of emotional currents as they manifest within the physical tissues. It is a proven psychosomatic reality that intense emotional states such as acute anger, deep grief, or survival fear are not merely abstract psychological concepts. They are highly specific, visceral, neurochemical events that take place within the boundaries of your physical body. When these emotional states are denied conscious validation or are suppressed due to societal conditioning, their energetic signatures become locked within the muscular and visceral structures, translating over time into chronic symptoms. The Zen approach requires that you learn to welcome all emotional weather patterns with absolute equanimity, acknowledging their transient nature. When an intense emotional wave surfaces within your physiology, you are directed to utilize your conscious respiration as an unshakable anchor. You do not run from the emotion, nor do you feed it with looping, retrospective mental narratives instead. You track its physical expression within your body, noticing the tightening chest, the burning stomach, or the clenching jaw. You breathe directly into those tissues. By allowing the emotion to completely exist without resistance, you permit its energy to complete its natural life cycle, metabolize, and naturally dissolve out of your system. Protocol 3. Radical presence as a biological de-escalator. The third methodology hinges on the profound therapeutic capacity of unfragmented, radical presence in our hyper-accelerated modern landscape. Our attention is routinely fractured into 1,000 competing streams, divided between retrospective analysis of historical events and anxious, predictive modeling of future scenarios. This chronic cognitive fragmentation maintains your nervous system in a state of low-grade, perpetual survival activation, exhausting your cellular reserves and compromising your immune system's capacity for autophagic repair. Zen asserts that the deliberate consolidation of your attention into the immediate, unmediated present moment is an act of supreme healing. When your consciousness is entirely gathered into the now, the brain drops out of its defensive survival loops. Practice bringing your absolute attention to the immediate baseline of your current experience. The precise texture of the air entering your nostrils, the ambient auditory landscape of the room, the deep pull of gravity anchoring your bones to the surface beneath you. In this state of undivided, non-striving presence, your biological organism automatically reallocates its energy away from survival hypervigilance toward systemic cellular repair, metabolic stabilization, and natural homeostatic restoration. Protocol 4. Compassionate auto-attunement meta. The fourth protocol focuses on the deliberate modification of your internal dialogue through the technology of metta, or compassionate auto-attunement. When we are confronted with chronic pain, physical limitations, or illness, our default internal narration is frequently characterized by extreme frustration, resentment, and aggression directed toward our own body. We view our failing health as a betrayal, treating our physical form like an insubordinate piece of machinery that must be beaten into compliance. This internal hostility creates a severe psychological feedback loop, generating stress hormones that directly exacerbate the physical inflammation and pain signals. This methodology requires you to consciously replace this aggressive stance with the exact quality of gentle, protective care you would instantly extend to a severely injured child or a suffering animal. You bring your attention directly to the localized zone of intense discomfort and silently articulate targeted expressions of compassionate intent. May this tissue return to ease. May this center be liberated from constriction. May I hold this pain with absolute patience. This shift from hostile resistance to soft, compassionate attunement drastically alters your neurochemical state, prompting the release of endorphins and oxytocin, which naturally downregulate pain transmission across your spinal networks. Protocol 5. Forensic mapping of psychosomatic patterns. The fifth methodology requires the systematic, objective tracking of correlations between your physical symptoms and your socio-emotional environments. You are invited to transform into a disciplined, dispassionate researcher of your own mind-body ecology. Notice with clinical precision exactly when and where your specific symptoms escalate. Does your cervical stiffness intensify during specific professional meetings or interactions with specific personalities? Does your gastrointestinal distress peak when you are navigating a period of unexpressed boundary violations? Does your cranial pressure swell when you are over-allocating energy to digital overstimulation? This process of forensic mapping has absolutely nothing to do with generating self-blame or constructing reductive, simplistic psychological explanations for complex physical conditions. It is about cultivating vipassana clear, unvarnished insight into the real-time operation of your mind-body continuum. When you map these precise patterns with absolute clarity, you step out of the illusion that your physical suffering is a random, chaotic assault from the universe. You gain invaluable operational data, empowering you to make proactive, structural modifications to your life landscape that actively support your physiological preservation. Protocol 6. Integrated synthesis, the middle way. The final protocol establishes the non-negotiable requirement of the middle way, the conscious, sophisticated integration of all available healing modalities. Zen philosophy completely rejects the dangerous trap of dogmatic extremism. It is a severe mistake to abandon the brilliant, life-saving interventions of orthodox clinical Western medicine in favor of exclusive reliance on spiritualized or energetic explanations, just as it is equally limiting to treat the human body as a purely mechanical apparatus devoid of emotional and psychological dimensions. True wisdom resides in systemic integration, the balanced utilization of orthodox medical diagnostics, advanced clinical pharmacology, physical therapy, and surgical interventions alongside deep somatic therapy, acupuncture, dietary optimization, and meditative self-regulation. You are encouraged to collaborate with qualified, holistic practitioners across diverse disciplines who respect the profound loop connecting mind, body, and spirit. Treat every legitimate therapeutic modality as a valuable tool within your wider restorative arsenal, evaluating every option through the clean lens of empirical efficiency. Use what actively moves your system toward homeostatic balance, and discard what fails to demonstrate real-world efficacy. Act V. Somnolent architecture, the metaphor of the great ocean. As we navigate toward the conclusion of this deep somatic exploration, and as the biological pull of physical exhaustion begins to systematically downregulate your analytical networks, let your awareness expand to contemplate the classic Zen metaphor of the great ocean. Your conscious intellect, with its endless loop of daily anxieties, professional strategies, personal narratives, and localized pain sensations, is functionally identical to the highly volatile surface of the sea. That surface is continuously subjected to the unpredictable atmospheric currents of external events, generating turbulent waves, crashing swells, and chaotic movement. If you mistake those surface waves for the absolute reality of the ocean, you will live in a constant state of existential panic, perpetually terrified of the next incoming storm. However, when you deliberately drop your center of awareness down out of the surface networks and sink into the vast, deep interior architecture of the sea, your perspective transforms. 200 feet beneath the surface, the water is characterized by an unshakable, pristine stillness, completely unaffected by the hurricane-force winds or the crashing chaos directly above. The surface turbulence is not a separate entity. It is merely a superficial movement of the exact same water that forms the deep, silent abyss. Your fundamental consciousness, your original, unconditioned nature is the vast oceanic abyss. The localized aches within your spine, the transient currents of anxiety within your renal foundations, and the rapid thoughts darting through your cranium are merely the temporary surface waves passing through the expansive sky of your awareness. No matter how dark, intense, or stormy those passing clouds or crashing waves may manifest, the fundamental sky and the deep oceanic abyss remain permanently uninjured, completely uncompromised, and luminous with absolute possibility. You are invited to completely abandon the heavy, exhausting raft of active control now. You have labored with immense fidelity across the arc of your life journey. In this pocket of time, there is absolutely no requirement for further labor. Permit your physical form to sink entirely into the supportive embrace of gravity, allowing your bones to grow heavy, your musculature to thoroughly liquefy, and your analytical cortical engines to quietly turn off their power matrices. Your remarkable biological organism possesses an ancient, highly evolved intelligence that knows exactly how to heal, regenerate, and restore balance when the frantic controlling ego finally steps out of the way. Enter the profound architecture of non-action, surrendering your entire existence to the deep, restorative currents of sleep, resting secure in the absolute knowledge that you are inherently whole, structurally complete, and fundamentally home. Act V. The extended tapestry of somatic wisdom, the architectural blueprint of the skeletal framework. To slide even deeper into this restorative current, let us extend our diagnostic gaze to the deepest, most durable layer of your physical embodiment, the skeletal architecture. Your bones are not dead, inert chalk structures. They are highly dynamic, living tissues, a crystalline matrix that is continuously remodeling itself in response to the gravitational stresses of your life. They represent the ultimate biological crystallization of memory, structure, and foundational endurance. The skeleton is the ancient vault that protects your central nervous system, shields your vital viscera, and houses the marrow where your life-sustaining blood cells are continuously forged. When you feel an unyielding, deep-seated ache within your major bony structure as the pelvic basin, the heavy shafts of the femurs, or the dense architecture of the rib cagezin wisdom, invites you to contemplate your relationship with the absolute bedrock of your life. Are you currently standing on a structural foundation that is genuinely authentic to your true nature? Or have you built your entire life apparatus upon the shifting, unstable sands of external expectations and borrowed identities? Your bones are the silent historians of your existence. They archive every physical impact, every emotional bracing pattern, and every decade of unyielding structural stress you have navigated. In the quiet landscape of classical Zen meditation, the skeleton is conceptualized as an elegant lattice designed to hold the human consciousness in a posture of effortless dignity. When the bones are properly stacked in alignment with the gravitational field of the planet, the surrounding musculature is liberated from its chronic task of hypervigilant splinting. As you rest in this moment, consciously imagine your skeletal framework shedding its heavy burden of muscular defense. Let the weight of your skull drop completely into the support of your pillow. Let your shoulder blades widen and sink. Let your pelvic basin become immensely heavy, like a massive stone anchor dropping into the silent depths of a dark lake. By consciously relaxing your relationship with your skeletal core, you signal to your deepest neurobiological networks that it is entirely safe to cease all structural vigilance. The vascular rivers and the currents of distribution. Beneath the skin and surrounding the bones runs an extraordinary labyrinthine network of vascular rivers, the arterial and venous pathways that span tens of thousands of miles within your single form. This intricate circulatory system is responsible for the continuous, high-efficiency distribution of oxygen, glucose, hormonal signals, and immunological defense cells to every single outpost of your cellular empire, while systematically collecting metabolic waste products to be processed and expelled. Your blood is a literal river of life, a dynamic current that must remain in constant, fluid motion to preserve the vitality of the whole ecosystem. When you analyze vascular anomalies, coldness in the extremities, chronic hypertension, or localized circulatory congestion, you are looking directly at the physical embodiment of a restricted life current. Zen wisdom asks, where are you currently blocking the natural, fluid circulation of love, expression, and vitality in your life? Are you holding on to ancient emotional grievances or defensive strategies so tightly that you have literally constricted your arterial walls, restricting the life-giving flow of energy to vital sectors of your own being? The historical Buddha frequently spoke of the universal reality of impermanence under the concept of anicath truth, that all phenomena are a flowing, changing river, never a static, solid monument. When we attempt to grasp an experience, freeze a relationship, or rigidly lock a specific life phase into place, we are attempting to dam a river, creating catastrophic pressure and stagnation behind our artificial barriers. Your vascular system thrives exclusively on the principle of unhindered flow. As you breathe now, visualize the entire vascular network within your body expanding, softening, and clearing its pathways. See the blood flowing effortlessly down the long corridors of your arms and legs, warming the tips of your fingers and toes, and circulating through the complex structures of your brain with pristine ease. Allow yourself to become the river, relinquishing all rigid control and trusting the natural, fluid dynamics of your existence to distribute nourishment exactly where it is required. The endocrine orchestration and the chemistry of equilibrium. Deep within the hidden recesses of your anatomy resides the endocrine system, a network of silent glands that operate as the master chemical orchestrators of your biological reality. The hypothalamus, the pituitary, the thyroid, the adrenals, the pancreas, and the reproductive glands continuously synthesize and secrete high-potency chemical messengers directly into your circulatory system. These hormones exert absolute dictatorial control over your metabolic rate, your immune responses, your reproductive cycles, your sleep architecture, and your overall emotional baseline. This system is a hypersensitive chemical mirror, translating your psychological perceptions of the world instantly into biological reality. When you cross thresholds into endocrine dysregulation, adrenal exhaustion, thyroid imbalances, or blood sugar fluctuations, your physiology is demonstrating a severe breakdown in its internal chemistry of equilibrium. Zen Insight invites you to evaluate the precise pace and quality of your daily existence. Are you living in a state of perpetual emergency, continuously flooding your biological vessel with the highly corrosive chemistry of cortisol and adrenaline? Are you forcing your thyroid to run at an unsustainable evolutionary surplus to satisfy an insatiable ego-driven demand for hyperproductivity? The Zen lifestyle emphasizes the radical cultivation of simplicity, deceleration, and intentional spaciousness. The historical masters recognized that a human being cannot achieve high-level spiritual awakening or biological longevity while their internal chemistry is locked in a perpetual state of primitive survival panic. Your endocrine dysregulation may be interpreted as a fierce, defensive intervention by your body, a non-negotiable demand to dismantle the unsustainable pace of your lifestyle and return to the deep harmony of the middle way. As you settle further into the night, visualize your master glands downregulating their production lines. See your adrenal glands resting like small caps atop your kidneys, completely cooling down, ceasing their emergency broadcasts, and entering a phase of profound replenishment. Allow your entire internal chemistry to realign itself with the pristine, balanced blueprint of your original nature, the neurological grid and the processing of consciousness. We turn our analytical awareness to the crown jewel of evolutionary architecture, the neurological grid, comprising the central brain, the spinal cord, and the vast, web-like network of peripheral nerves that branch outward to saturate every single millimeter of your flesh. This system is the ultimate operational interface for human consciousness. It reads every environmental shift, interprets every tactile sensation, coordinates every complex motor output, and continuously constructs your subjective perception of reality. The nervous system is a hyperplastic grid, constantly rewiring its structural connections based on the repetitive inputs of your thoughts, focus, and emotional habits. When you navigate chronic neurological overarousal, persistent insomnia, systemic sensory hypersensitivity, central pain sensitization, or an unyielding inner agitation, you are witnessing a neurological grid that has become dangerously locked in a hyperdefensive, reactive configuration. Your neural pathways have become so deeply grooved by years of hypervigilance, professional stress, and systemic anxiety that they are firing continuously, reading threat in environments that are entirely safe, and interpreting neutral physical sensations as signals of acute physical emergency. Zen meditation operates as a direct, non-pharmacological neural intervention. By practicing the art of open monitoring, sitting in absolute physical stillness, while permitting thoughts, emotions, and sensations to arise and pass away without a single shred of reactivity, you break the continuous feedback loops that sustain neurological overarousal. You systematically starve the ancient reactive threat networks of the brain, specifically the amygdala, while actively reinforcing the cortical networks responsible for emotional regulation, cognitive clarity, and somatic peace. As you lie here in this deep sanctuary of rest, consciously permit your nervous system to undergo a comprehensive systemic reboot. Visualize the electrical storms across your cerebral cortex gradually dimming, the frantic firing of your peripheral nerves softening into a steady, low-frequency hum, and your entire neurological grid slipping into the deep restorative currents of parasympathetic dominance. You are entirely safe in this moment. There is absolutely nothing to defend against, nothing to scan for, and nothing to process. Let the grid rest, the cellular commonwealth and the architecture of renewal. Let us drop our focus down beneath the level of tissues and organs, anchoring our awareness within the microscopic reality of the cellular commonwealth. Your human form is a brilliant cooperative civilization, composed of approximately 30 trillion living cells, each functioning as an autonomous entity with its own metabolic engine, its own defensive barriers, and its own complex internal intelligence, yet all operating in absolute, unselfish cooperation to sustain the singular life of the whole organism. Every second of your existence, this commonwealth is executing millions of precise biochemical operations, repairing genetic replication errors, manufacturing proteins, neutralizing cellular waste, and replacing worn-out structures through the process of autophagic renewal. When you confront chronic cellular inflammation, autoimmune disorders, or systemic fatigue, you are looking at a state of profound civil discord within this biological commonwealth. Your cells have become disoriented by the continuous background noise of psychological stress, emotional trauma, and systemic misalignment, causing their internal communication lines to degrade and leading them to turn their defensive weapons inward against their own brothers. Zen Wisdom asks, are you currently providing a clean, peaceful internal environment that allows your cellular commonwealth to execute its natural, self-healing tasks? Or are you poisoning the internal atmosphere with chronic self-criticism, toxic emotional suppression, and an unyielding refusal to afford your body the fundamental rest it requires to preserve its molecular integrity? The practice of deep, contemplative quiescence creates the precise physiological conditions required for high-level cellular repair. When the conscious mind surrenders its restless striving and enters a state of absolute, unconditional acceptance, the body redirects its entire energetic budget away from external action toward internal maintenance. Your cells instantly optimize their metabolic pathways, accelerate the elimination of toxic waste, and repair damaged cellular walls. As you rest in this profound space, visualize a wave of pristine, rejuvenating light cascading through the 30 trillion cells of your commonwealth. See every mitochondrion optimizing its energy output, every cellular membrane softening to permit healthy exchange, and the entire biological collective returning to a state of flawless cooperative harmony. Your cells possess an ancient, unshakable blueprint for optimal health you need only afford them the gift of your deep, uninterrupted rest to let them manifest that perfection, the wisdom of kintsugi and the illusions of imperfection. As you drift further toward the boundary of deep somnolence, let us revisit the profound Zen aesthetic paradigm of kintsugi, the ancient art of repairing shattered ceramic vessels by sealing the fractures with a brilliant lacquer laced with pure gold. In the Western aesthetic tradition, a broken object is frequently conceptualized as permanently ruined, stripped of its functional utility and its economic value, destined only for elimination. The kintsugi philosophy represents a radical, counterintuitive inversion of this perspective. It asserts that the breaks, fractures, and historical wounds of an object are not flaws to be hidden or sources of shame to be disguised. Rather, they represent the absolute core of the object's unique historical narrative and are to be deliberately elevated into features of supreme beauty and structural value. This elegant framework provides an unmatched blueprint for your relationship with your own physical challenges, chronic limitations, and historical traumas. Modern culture is obsessed with an artificial, hyper-sanitized illusion of physical perfection, marketing a fantasy of a youth-obsessed body completely devoid of scars, limitations, weaknesses, or degenerative changes. When your physical form inevitably deviates from this impossible standard due to illness, injury, or the natural laws of aging, the default psychological response is to plunge into deep shame, self-loathing, and a frantic attempt to conceal your vulnerabilities. Zen wisdom invites you to apply the golden lacquer of radical self-compassion to the fractures of your embodiment. Your physical scars, your chronic structural limitations, and the unique adaptations your body has constructed to survive historical trauma are absolutely not indications of degradation or failure. They are the golden lines of your personal kintsugi trajectory. They demonstrate your profound resilience, your unyielding adaptability, and the magnificent history of a biological vessel that has braved the storms of human existence and emerged unique, dignified, and incredibly beautiful. Stop wishing for an imaginary, unblemished body that has never known pain. Embrace the gold-repaired reality of your form, validating your cracks as the precise sites where your deepest spiritual wisdom and empathy have broken through the hard shell of your ego. The law of interdependence and the myth of isolation. Let us contemplate the foundational Zen doctrine of pratityasamutpada, frequently translated as dependent origination, or the absolute law of radical interdependence. This philosophical framework asserts with absolute clarity that absolutely no phenomenon in the entire cosmos exists as an isolated, Independent entity, everything that manifests in the phenomenal world does so exclusively as a consequence of an infinitely complex network of prior causes, supporting conditions and mutual relationships. Your individual physical body is absolutely not a discrete, self-contained biological machine sealed off from the rest of reality by a boundary of skin. It is a highly localized expression of the entire material universe, woven into real-time conversation with the global ecosystem. Consider the absolute reality of your respiration. You cannot execute a single inhalation without drawing upon the photosynthetic outputs of ancient forests and oceanic phytoplankton. Miles away, you cannot execute a single exhalation without returning carbon compounds that will directly nourish the plant kingdoms of your immediate environment. Your physical matrix is composed of chemical elements carbon, nitrogen, iron, calcium that were forged in the thermonuclear furnaces of dying stars billions of years ago. Elements that are merely visiting this temporary configuration before returning to the wider geological currents of the Earth. When you feel profoundly alone, abandoned within your physical suffering, or trapped inside a chronic illness, your consciousness has fallen victim to the illusion of isolation. You are looking at your body through the tiny, terrified lens of the individual ego. Zen invites you to shatter that lens and experience interbeing. Your physical suffering is not a private punishment. It is a localized manifestation of the universal vulnerability that characterizes all sentient physical existence. Every human being who has ever walked the earth has navigated the landscape of physical pain, has witnessed the gradual decay of their biological vessel, and has confronted the reality of limitation. When you step into this realization, your relationship with your suffering undergoes a tectonic shift. You transition out of the isolating question, "Why is this happening to me?" and enter the collective space of universal human empathy. You realize that your body is being held, sustained, and breathed by a vast cosmic apparatus that refuses to leave you behind. You are an intrinsic, non-negotiable component of the living fabric of the universe. As you prepare to let go of conscious awareness, permit yourself to dissolve into this cosmic matrix. You do not need to hold your life together through willpower. You can confidently permit the universe that created your body to manage its filtration, its circulation, and its restoration while you rest. Act Vi. The final dissolution into pristine rest. We have systematically executed a comprehensive diagnostic, philosophical, and somatic voyage through the landscape of your physical embodiment. We have mapped the cranial domains, aligned the cervical bridges, unlocked the throat centers, illuminated the cardiac cores, and grounded our consciousness deep within the unshakable bedrock of the hara. We have systematically evaluated the mechanics of your resistance, dismantled the toxic narratives of self-blame, and deployed advanced clinical protocols of mindful interception, emotional metabolism, and compassionate auto-attunement. Now, the hour has arrived to abandon even the practice of meditation itself. The words you are hearing are no longer concepts to be intellectually processed. They are merely a gentle sonic vibration fading into the background of an expansive, pristine silence. There is absolutely nothing left to understand, nothing left to track, and nothing left to cure. Your physical form has grown immensely heavy, thoroughly saturated by the deep, warm currents of total relaxation. The boundary between your internal consciousness and the space around you has dissolved into a singular, fluid field of peaceful presence. Let your breath become completely autonomous, a quiet, shallow ripple upon a boundless ocean of peace. You are slipping effortlessly across the threshold into the great rest, the state of Wu-Wei, where everything is accomplished precisely through the radical act of doing absolutely nothing. Permit your individual identity to quietly uncouple from its stories, its anxieties, and its somatic patterns, resting deeply in the timeless, unconditioned reality of your original face. Your body is resting in absolute homeostatic alignment. Your heart is cradled in unconditional compassion. Your mind is completely dissolved into the vast, luminous sky of pure awareness. Sleep now, traveler of the inner landscape. Sleep with absolute trust in the magnificent ancient wisdom that animates your form. Rest in the pristine, unshakable peace that is your eternal birthright. All is well, all is resolved, all is returned to wholeness. Peace, peace, deep, unyielding rest.